I want you to just picture a vast mist-covered plain right at dawn. Like the air is entirely still. It's that kind of heavy, eerie silence that, well, almost rings in your ears, you know?
Yeah, that absolute dead quiet before something happens.
Exactly. And then a low guttural growl just kind of vibrates through the fog. And before you can even process like where it came from, it is instantly answered by this chorus of eerie, high-pitched, chattering yips.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that is a terrifying sound to wake up to.
Right. And if you were standing right in the middle of that, you wouldn't just be witnessing a random animal fight. You'd be caught in a collision course between two of the most finely tuned, efficient apex predators that evolution has ever produced.
I mean, it is the ultimate biological pressure test. We're basically taking the primal forces of nature and stripping them down to their absolute core mechanics.
Yeah, just to see which evolutionary strategy holds up when pushed to the absolute brink. And that is the mission for today's deep dive. We are pulling from this really fascinating breakdown by a source called Apex Truth, and we're staging a hypothetical high-stakes matchup.
Which is such a cool concept.
It really is. We are pitting a pack of northern gray wolves directly against a pack of African wild dogs. But, I mean, to be clear to you listening, we're not looking at this like some kind of cheap blood sport video game. Okay, let's unpack this because it's way deeper than that.
Right. This raises an important question, actually, because boiling it down to just, teeth and claws completely misses the actual science. This scenario is a masterclass in evolutionary biology.
Yeah.
To figure out who would actually survive this encounter, you have to dissect the really specific environmental pressures that forged each of these animals over, millions of years. Every physical trait, every weird little pack behavior, it all exists for a highly specific reason.
It's so true. So let's start with the undisputed heavyweight of the canine world, right? The gray wolf. When people hear the word wolf, this is exactly the animal they picture in their heads.
Oh, for sure. It's the iconic one.
Yeah, and Apex Truth points out that while there are, dozens of subspecies, the gray wolf, or timber wolf, is the largest and most geographically widespread. But what I really want to understand is what actually makes them the heavyweight?
Well, it really comes down to sheer mass and density, and that's shaped by just brutal environments. Gray wolves are circumpolar.
Meaning they circle the globe.
Exactly. They live up near the Earth's North Pole, so they completely dominate North America, Europe, and Asia. They've had to adapt to survive in, deep forests, rugged mountains, freezing tundras, all of it.
Right, because when you live in environments where temperatures can plunge to, minus 40 degrees, you can't exactly be a lightweight.
No, being small simply isn't an option, especially when your primary food sources are these massive, heavily muscled herbivores. We're talking moose, elk, bison.
The numbers on these wolves are honestly just hard to wrap your head around. A gray wolf can reach up to 6.5 feet long. And the males, they routinely weigh between 80 and 180 pounds.
Yeah, and let me just put that in perspective for you, because trying to visualize a 180-pound dog is difficult. I mean, that is the size of a fully grown human man.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
But entirely composed of fast-twitch muscle fiber, dense bone, and this thick, insulating fur.
So it's not just a large domestic dog. You hear wolf and you might think of a husky, but that's completely wrong.
Yeah.
A better way to think of a gray wolf is like a biological diesel freight train.
A freight train. I like that.
These aren't just dogs. They're the heavily armored defensive linemen of the animal kingdom who somehow also run marathons. They're built to just maintain this unstoppable momentum for miles and miles.
That is a much better way to conceptualize them, because their entire hunting strategy relies on that diesel engine endurance. They don't typically ambush their prey.
Wait, really? They don't sneak up?
Not usually. They initiate a chase, assuming their prey will run. In fact, the wolves actively want them to run. They can maintain speeds of 30 to 37 miles per hour for incredibly long stretches.
That is just exhausting to even think about.
It is. They're relying on psychological and physical attrition. They will literally run a moose until its heart is practically exploding from exhaustion, and only then do they move in for the kill.
Okay, but wait, I'm trying to picture a pack of wolves actually bringing down a full-grown moose, which is a massive animal. How do they actually finish the job? The endurance gets them there, sure, but what is the closing mechanism?
It's all in their jaw structure. The gray wolf possesses a bite force of over 1,200 pounds per square inch, over 1,200 psi.
That is insane. For context, a human bite force is around, what, 120 psi? So a wolf is biting down with 10 times the force that we can generate.
Exactly. And that isn't just some arbitrary number, right? That 1200 psi is an evolutionary necessity. In the dead of a freezing northern winter, food is incredibly scarce.
So they can't waste anything.
Right. If a wolf pack brings down an elk, they cannot afford to leave any calories behind. They have to eat everything. So that massive bite force evolved specifically to crack open frozen femurs and crush thick skulls.
Just to get to the marrow.
Yep, to access that nutrient-rich bone marrow inside. I mean, their mouths are literal bone crushers.
Wow. So their win condition, evolutionarily speaking, is just outlasting the prey and then delivering this catastrophic bone-shattering bite that ends the fight instantly. It's a terrifyingly efficient system.
It really is. But, and this is crucial, it is a system optimized for a cold environment where food is large, scarce, and heavily defended.
Which brings us to a massive pivot. Because if being a 180-pound bone-crushing freight train is the pinnacle of canine evolution in the North, why doesn't that strategy work everywhere?
Right, you can't just copy-paste that biology.
Exactly. Because we are leaving the freezing tundras now and dropping right into the sun-baked savannas of sub-Saharan Africa. We are introducing our second combatant, the African wild dog.
Yes. Also known as the painted dog or the Cape hunting dog. And you raise the perfect question. Why aren't they 180-pound bone crushers down there?
Yeah, why not?
Because the African savanna is an entirely different biological theater. A gray wolf in sub-Saharan Africa would just be a walking buffet for the true apex predators of that region.
You're talking about, like, lions and hyenas.
Precisely. In Africa, the pressure isn't just about taking down your prey. It's about avoiding this concept called kleptoparasitism.
Okay, stop right there. Kleptoparasitism. I need an explanation for that one.
I know, it's a mouthful. It literally means parasitism by theft.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so if an African wild dog pack spends the energy to hunt and kill an antelope, they don't have the luxury of just leisurely eating it like a wolf would. A pride of lions or a massive clan of spotted hyenas will hear the commotion, walk over, and simply steal the carcass.
Because the wild dogs can't fight off a lion.
Exactly. You can't fight off a 400-pound lion. So to survive, the wild dog had to evolve a completely different strategy. We're talking extreme speed, swarm tactics, and the ability to consume an entire animal in minutes before the bigger predators arrive.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
Because that completely reframes how I look at their physical stats. When you look at the data from Apex Truth, the African wild dog seems completely outmatched by the wolf.
Oh, absolutely. On paper, it looks bad.
Right. I mean, they are only 2.5 to 3.5 feet long. They weigh between 40 and 80 pounds. I was reading this thinking, how does an 80-pound wild dog even stand a chance?
It looks like a total mismatch. A 180-pound wolf versus an 80-pound wild dog.
But the pack dynamics change the math entirely. A typical wolf pack might be, what, 5 to 8 members? But the African wild dogs run in these massive swarms. Their packs frequently hit 15 to 20 individuals.
Yeah, and they operate at a much higher metabolic tempo, too. While wolves max out around 37 miles per hour, African wild dogs can sprint at 41 miles per hour.
So they're noticeably faster.
Considerably faster. When they hunt, it isn't the patient, miles-long attrition of the wolf. It is a high-speed blitz. They swarm these medium-sized antelopes, and they don't wait for the animal to collapse from exhaustion.
Wait, what do they do?
They actively dismantle it on the run. They bite at the legs and flanks to force it down through blood loss and physical damage.
Jeez. But here is the piece of the puzzle I'm really struggling with. The source lists the African wild dog's bite force at about 320 psi. Compared to the wolf's 1200 psi, that sounds incredibly weak.
It does.
So if they have to eat their prey in minutes before lions show up, how on earth do they do that with a relatively weak bite?
Well, what's fascinating here is that they aren't trying to crush bone at all. They don't need 1200 psi because their teeth are just built differently. African wild dogs possess this highly specialized dental adaptation called a trenchant heel.
Trenchant heel. What exactly is that, and where is it located?
So it's located on the lower carnassial tooth.
Which is where, like in the front?
The back.
The back.
It's toward the back of the jaw. In most mammalian carnivores, the carnassial teeth are those large, specialized teeth designed for shearing flesh.
Okay, that makes sense.
But most canines have a flatter section on this tooth to help grind up bone or plant matter, because most canines are somewhat omnivorous, right? But African wild dogs are hyper-carnivores. Their diet is almost exclusively meat.
Oh, so they don't need the grinding part.
Exactly. So evolution sharpened that back tooth. The trenchant heel acts exactly like a pair of surgical shears.
Oh, wow. So while the wolf is a sledgehammer, the wild dog is like a scalpel.
Yes, a whole pack of scalpels. And out of all the canines in the world, they only share this trenchant heel feature with the hole in Asia and the South American bush dog.
That is so specific.
It really is. It allows them to rapidly slice meat rather than crush it. You combine that rapid shearing ability with 20 dogs biting simultaneously, and the prey is consumed in a fraction of the time it takes other predators.
Man, I'm picturing 20 hyper-fast meat-shearing predators just moving as one unit. The level of communication required to coordinate a swarm like that must be insane. And actually, this brings up one of the most bizarre details from the Apex Truth data.
Oh, I know what you're going to say.
The African wild dogs vote. Like, they hold an actual democratic rally before a hunt, and they vote by sneezing.
Yes. It is such a fascinating social mechanism. It's basically a sharp, short exhalation of air through the nostrils.
I just cannot get the image out of my head. It's like some bizarre, high-stakes corporate boardroom where the CEO suggests a hostile takeover, and instead of raising hands, all the executives just sit around aggressively sneezing to approve it.
It's exactly like that.
But how does that actually work mechanically?
It's a literal quorum. If a dominant dog, the alpha, initiates the rally and wants to hunt, it usually only takes about 3 agreeing sneezes from the rest of the pack to reach a consensus, and then the pack just moves out.
So the alpha's vote carries more weight.
Exactly. But, and this is the cool part, if a subordinate, lower-ranking dog is hungry and tries to initiate a hunt, the pack requires a much higher consensus. It might take 10 or more sneezes from the group to validate the subordinate's request.
That is amazing. It's a real democracy.
It is. It prevents chaos. It ensures the swarm operates with a unified, collective mind rather than just fracturing into smaller, ineffective groups.
Okay, so we have the layout. The northern heavyweights, built for bone-crushing endurance, and the southern tacticians, built for high-speed swarming and shearing. But if we are going to actually stage this battle, we have a massive logistical problem.
We do.
Where do they fight? Because environment dictates survival here.
Environment is absolutely everything. You cannot drop the African wild dogs into the snowy tundras of the north. They have sparse coats, massive ears designed to dissipate heat, and very little body fat.
They just freeze.
Instantly. In a sub-zero environment, their internal temperatures would plummet. They would succumb to hypothermia before the wolves even found them.
And if we reverse it, like we drop the gray wolves onto the African savanna,
the wolves would suffer fatal heat stroke. I mean, they have a dense undercoat and thick guard hairs designed to trap heat, plus a whole countercurrent heat exchange system in their paws meant to keep them from freezing on ice.
right, so in the African sun, they're wearing winter parkas.
Exactly. Their massive bodies would overheat in minutes, especially if they tried to engage in a high-speed fight.
So per the source, we have to artificially select a neutral arena, a temperate middle ground, where neither side suffers an immediate fatal environmental penalty.
Southern Europe is usually suggested for this.
Right, like the plains of Spain or Italy. Moderate temperatures, no freezing ice, no blazing savanna sun.
Yeah, it is the only way to test the pure biomechanics of the two species against each other without the weather playing favorites.
Okay, so let's set the board.
Yeah.
Based on the averages from the data, we are looking at a gray wolf pack of 7 members, and they will be facing an African wild dog pack of 15 members.
That's a solid average for both.
I feel like I'm reading the tail of the tape for a prize fight. The wild dogs have a 2-to-1 numbers advantage, and they are faster. But the wolves are more than double the size and possess nearly 4 times the bite force. I mean, is this just the classic debate of quality versus quantity?
Well, I'm not sure quality is the right word because both are highly evolved. It is more about a clash of psychological paradigms, really.
How so?
The gray wolves are used to walking into any situation as the largest, most dominant biological force in the room. They just don't back down. But the African wild dogs don't care how big you are because they are used to overwhelming targets through chaotic volume.
Okay, so put yourself on that plane in southern Europe. The mist clears. The 7 giant, heavily armored wolves lock eyes with this chattering, swarming mass of 15 painted dogs. The tension is just palpable. How does the physics of this engagement actually unfold?
Well, the first few seconds dictate everything. And it really comes down to the African wild dog's win condition, which is dictating the pace. Remember, they have a 10-mile-per-hour speed advantage. They cannot afford to just stand in a line and fight one-on-one.
Right, because if a 60-pound dog tries to face a 180-pound wolf head-on, the physics just don't work. The dog gets crushed.
Exactly. The wild dogs have to employ their blitzkrieg swarm tactic. If 2 or 3 wild dogs can use their speed to flank and pounce on a single gray wolf at the very edge of the formation, they might be able to use those shearing, crunchant heels to inflict massive bleeding instantly.
So they have to strike first and fast.
Yes, if they score an early knockout on 1 or 2 wolves, they suddenly change the math entirely.
They snowball the momentum. Like a 2-to-1 advantage suddenly becomes a 3-to-1 advantage.
Precisely. But, and this is a huge, but that margin for error is razor thin. Which brings us to the gray wolf win condition. Their strategy relies on defensive formation, extreme patience, and catastrophic power.
They aren't going to panic.
No, the wolves are not going to scatter. They are going to stay tight, guarding each other's flanks, and force the wild dogs to come to them.
And this is where that 1200 psi bite force comes into play, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is genuinely terrifying to realize that if one wild dog miscalculates its jump or hesitates for even a fraction of a second, it is immediately caught in a biological bear trap.
That is the deciding factor right there. The wolves don't need to bite a wild dog multiple times. They don't need to bleed them out over 20 minutes. One solid strike from a gray wolf is going to snap a spine or crush a skull.
Just instant lights out.
Yeah, it removes a wild dog from the equation permanently.
So the wolves are basically just systematically dismantling the wild dog's only real weapon, their numbers.
Yes, the African wild dogs are banking entirely on overwhelming the wolves in the first few minutes of chaos, but the gray wolves are endurance machines. They are built for long, drawn-out, physically draining engagements.
So time is on the wolf side.
Absolutely. The longer this violent melee continues, the more the wild dogs will tire, and the more the physical realities of the wolves' sheer size and unyielding stamina will just take over.
It really is a battle of biological pacing. The high-speed blitz versus the brutal siege.
And, if we connect this to the bigger picture, this hypothetical scenario highlights a crucial rule of biology. Nature inherently avoids this kind of mutual destruction.
Because it's just not practical.
Exactly. Predators of this caliber are almost always separated by geography or specific ecological niches because direct conflict is a massive waste of energy and life.
You mean even if the wolves win the fight, half the pack might be severely injured, which means they can't hunt the next day, which means they just starve anyway.
Spot on. In the wild, an injury is often a death sentence. What we are really looking at in this thought experiment are 2 parallel, perfectly viable strategies for ruling a continent. Singular, overwhelming physical dominance on one side, and hyper-organized, high-speed collective action on the other.
They are both true apex strategies. They were just painted on completely different environmental canvases.
That's a great way to put it.
So what does this all mean? When you really dig into this breakdown from Apex Truth, it sort of brings you out of the hypothetical bloodshed and forces you to just stand in awe of the mechanics of the natural world. I mean, these aren't just animals. They're highly specialized, perfectly tuned instruments shaped by millions of years of survival pressure.
It definitely instills a deep respect for how precarious and delicately balanced these ecosystems really are.
But I want to leave you with a thought that makes this whole deep dive just a little less hypothetical. Right now, this battle requires us to magically teleport these animals to a neutral arena in Europe. But we live in a reality where climate change, deforestation, and habitat loss are actively shifting the boundaries of the wild.
Yeah, that's a very real factor now.
Species are migrating into new, overlapping territories at an unprecedented rate just to find food and survive. So this specific matchup might remain a thought experiment, but as borders blur, what other apex predators might suddenly find themselves staring each other down through the mist? The ecosystems are shifting, and real-life battlegrounds are being drawn right now. Keep that in mind the next time you look at the natural world around you.